Sorry about that, babe.
An American Tail: Fievel Goes West is a game that I covered on the channel back around the time that I started it. As you could expect, the review is quite old, not the best quality, I didn't have the best equipment back then, and so forth. I've been on a bit of a Bits and Glory pass kick lately, most recently with Hook on the SNES, and I decided, let's recover Fievel Goes West. I'll leave a link to the original review in the description and pinned comment below, but we'll be unlisting it from the search, so good night, sweet prince. An American Tail: Fievel Goes West was developed by Shimada Kikaku and published by Hudson Soft, released on the SNES in North America in August of 1994. An American Tail: Fievel Goes West was an animated movie produced by Steven Spielberg, and it's actually the second movie in the series, with the first being known as just An American Tail. There was actually another game of Fievel Goes West that came out before the SNES version. It was on DOS, but they differ drastically, with it being more of a typical DOS/PC title, point-and-click adventure, puzzle type of deal. For the purpose of this review, we're just going to focus on the SNES title, which is essentially an action platformer. Before I dive into the nuts and bolts of this game, I just wanted to share that this game was actually one of the first that I owned for the console. Many of the games that I got were purchased from a local video rental store who would constantly discount and sell games as they got a bit older, newer systems came out, so on and so forth. I remember specifically getting Fievel Goes West complete in box and a loose copy of ActRaiser for $40 total. Probably in 1985 or so, maybe very early 1986, so the prices were pretty decent, especially for back then. And goodness gracious, Fievel Goes West is a pricey game these days. Who knew? The story of An American Tail: Fievel Goes West is as follows. The Mousekewitz family heads west, coming to America, the land of opportunity. Cat R. Wall tells tales of great opportunity and a promise of utopia, but is hiding his true intentions that are, and I quote from the manual, to make mouse burgers out of them. Fievel catches wind of the secret and sets out to save his family. As mentioned, the game is a fairly standard action platformer consisting of 5 stages. New York City, the sewer, the train ride, the desert, and lastly, Green River. Fievel is armed with a pop gun that could be upgraded to rapid fire, or could even turn into a water gun that could also be upgraded to rapid fire. You'll use the gun to shoot enemies in the head, push obstacles out of the way, and even put out fires. Throughout the adventure, you will uncover hearts that replenish health, a big heart that replenishes all health and can make your overall health go up to a maximum of 5, coins which when 100 are collected provides a 1-up, special hidden items, and even a star that provides a short bout of invincibility. The game also has checkpoints in most levels in the form of the Wily Burp icons. They're pretty cool boss fights at the end of each stage, pitting yourself against foes such as One Eye, Puppet, Chula, Giant Hawk, and of course the infamous Cat R. Wall. Graphically, Fievel Goes West is a pretty pleasing game. I find that the character sprites, both the good guys and the bad guys, are very good looking. I especially enjoy the magnitude of the cat enemies and the 5 bosses. The differing stages also do a great job of putting you in the mood. You could feel the cold, damp nights of New York City, the stale stench and watery sewer, the breeze flowing by you on the train, the heat of the desert and Green River, and the pre-stage cinematics with the wanted posters in Mode 7, quote-unquote, falling in to the stage are very much welcomed. Music and sound. The words that I could think of to describe these aspects are solid and atmospheric. The tracks and sound effects themselves are really good. But the thing that I think they do best is they help add to the stage immersion and magnitude of the point of the adventure. For example, I don't really find myself bopping along to the soundtrack after powering the game off, like I would with games like, let's say, Batman on the Genesis, I guess any Sunsoft game, an RPG, and so on. Rather, I feel like the tracks on this game are perfectly crafted for the stages. If you play through the game, I think you'll kind of understand what I mean by that. Sure, they are catchy in a sense, but I've heard catchier. However, the immersion? That's where the sound excels. Controls. The controls of Fievel Goes West are fairly standard. You move Fievel with the D-pad, duck by holding down, you shoot with the Y button, and you could jump with B. I find that the controls are fairly responsive, but sometimes the hitboxes of shooting some enemies can be a bit learning curvy. Same goes for some of the jumping mechanics early in the game. but all in all, I didn't have much of an issue with them. Gameplay and fun factor. So you're probably thinking to yourself right now, dang, this must be a great game. Well, sort of. The major issues of Fievel Goes West lie in this category. The game itself is fairly easy. You have tons of opportunities to gain 1-ups, and realistically, if you don't give up, the game really won't give up on you either. I recently completed a no-death run, which despite the game being easy was definitely a little bit harder, as there are a few cheap spots, mostly towards the middle of the game, that require a bit of learning and trial and error, but overall there's really not much in the way of difficulty. The game itself is also fairly short. It could be casually completed in about 25 to 35 minutes, I'd say, with minimal pushback. Of course, your first playthrough will probably take a bit longer because you have to learn the ropes, so to speak, but the game itself is not very long and as such does not have a battery backup or a password system. But perhaps the biggest mark against the game is the lack of variety within the levels. The levels themselves are great, but the variety is not. This is very apparent in the sewer stages, which just kind of hand you similar screens back to back to back to back to back. And this trend continues on for the first 2 screens of the train stage, and it's just kind of a repeating theme as we progress throughout the rest of the game. I feel like the first stage, albeit very short, did the best job with a bit of variety. There are some minimal differences throughout, but all in all the screen variety within the stages is lacking and it hurts the game considerably. One last bit. I kinda wish there was a little bit more platforming in the game. Aside from essentially the beginning, there's very little in the way of pitfalls, and the platforming is mostly just avoiding damage. Now, I'm not saying that I want the game to be littered with insta-death spots, but it just kind of dulled down the challenge a bit and just made it seem sort of like a popgun shooter. Overall, though, it was fun to revisit An American Tail: Fievel Goes West. This is a game that is near and dear to my childhood, and I still own my copy from the aforementioned video rental store. It's a pretty good looking game with a good soundtrack and tight controls, marred by a low difficulty, lack of internal stage variety, and a little less platforming than I would have hoped for. All in all, though, I now give Fievel Goes West on the SNES a 7 out of 10. I originally gave it a 6 out of 10, and I think that was a bit harsh. I guess I could probably still be convinced of that on a different day, but for now we'll stick with the 7. I will say though, given the current price of this game in 2023, that I can't really recommend that you go out and buy it unless you're a super collector. So if you're not, fire up those EverDrives or SNES 9X and give it a go. If you've enjoyed this re-review, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you want more An American Tail: Fievel Goes West SNES content, check out the pinned comment description below for my old review, my no-death run walkthrough guide, and an unboxing of the original game. Take care.